Nice that you are here. I have a little déjà vu because 2 years ago, 2016, I was at the opening panel with the title "Society is Broken, Let's Fix It." We talked about hate, about trolls, and how this changed the discourse in our society, whether it's a danger for our democracy and what we can do. In the last 2 years, there happened a lot. We have a Netzwerk-Durchsetzungsgesetz. Facebook introduced a center for deleting stuff. Media is highly concentrated on these topics. They have community managers. They have community managers. We have 4 people here who do a lot about this, who think about what we can do, and I would like to talk to them about what happened in the last 2 years, whether hate changed, whether trolls changed, and if yes, how, and what will happen in the future. For example, what will we talk about in 2 years if we meet again? Franzi von Kempis is journalist and says that we need more participants, and maybe we don't always have to do do big steps, but small steps are enough. Kübra says that we need an own agenda. We need the own topics, set the own topics where we have our own discourse. Gerald thinks that it is very important that we understand some mechanisms with which the society is manipulated, because society, the internet, is very organized. And Hannes says that it's much more about an attack on the democracy. It's not about individual attacks, and trolls have become more intelligent. Hans introduced a Facebook group, I'm Here, 2 years ago, where people meet to discuss whenever media bring up topics which are worth of discussion and very dynamical. The members can meet to discuss and to do the discussion more constructive. The group has 40,000 members. Hannes, maybe you can say from your point of view, because you're so close to it, has hate changed in the last years?
Well, what I perceive is that there's a larger degree of organization, and we've talked a lot about that. So we notice that people actually, they team up, they meet up, they plan their discussions. There's political motivation behind the hate, and I have a bit of problems with the word hate, because I think if it's disorganized and well planned, it's not about hate. It's a very deliberate and deliberately controlled judgment and denigration of people that is happening here. And that is what I've noticed here, and I think there's a lot of foundations of democracy that are under very deliberate attack here.
So hate has become a little bit more silent, but more dangerous?
Well, it's dangerous because, and that's what I'm thinking about a lot, there are, the illusion of majorities is created, majority of opinions that then affect how opinions are formed. And this creates a sort of tipping point effect, where if that becomes more and more, there will be more and more people that think that there's something true about it. And when these attacks of these apparent majorities goes against journalists, against police, against the judiciary system, then you see there's something dangerous about it.
And 2 years ago, it was, from your point of view, more on an individual level, the attacks, and less organized?
Well, I came to this whole topic through the Ukraine crisis, which is where I first saw the Russian attempt at influencing the web in 2013, 2014. And the biggest thing there was the shitstorm that Gerald suffered, that I noticed because we were working together at the time. And for me, that was the reason that I said, okay, I have to do something. But I didn't have any idea what.
Exactly. Next to me is Gerald Hensel. And you want to make companies more aware of what kind of ads appear on the site. You introduce topics, ads against rights, so that the ads don't appear, for example, on Breitbart. You have also named Henrik von Broder and Axel Guten, and there came a shitstorm against you with the goal to completely destroy your lives. It was an epic dimensions. What exactly happened there? How organized was this?
It's a complex question that I think I would answer differently from day to day. We're talking about 2 weeks in my life where that in the end meant me leaving my old employer. That led to threats of killing me. And afterwards I did an analysis of the shitstorm and came to the conclusion that it's not the result of more or less justified outrage because of something I said or haven't said, but I was very organized digital actors.
What does it mean? How did they organize?
So we tracked several right-wing groups that, following some publications, targeted me specifically, attacked my employer, sent emails every day. Every single Facebook page was flooded with comments. I got somewhat between 1 and 3 articles about me every day. They were fake accounts of me, Photoshop tweets of me, everything. And that went on for a few weeks until there were the first threats of violence. And then when you look a little more closely and you look at one's Twitter account, you can see that then suddenly certain groups became more and more visible and more active, and the next day other groups become more and more active. And then later we looked at the results of analysis in detail, and we noticed that it's not just a random coincidence.
Next to Gerald is Kübra Gümüşay. If I still can't pronounce it right, you have to help me. Which means silver moon. Kübra has a column at Taz called Das Tuch. You have in 2013 under the hashtag Schau hin, look here. After the events at the New Year 2015-16, you have tried to do under the hashtag Aufmerksam to not manipulate feministic topics for racist ideas. And after the definition of Sascha Lobo last year, the not extreme society, you said that we have to organize the love more. What has changed for you in the last 2 years?
So I was a bit shocked. Also last year, after I was on stage here, I was shocked how helpless our society as a whole has reacted to this hate and reacted to this level of organization, especially because for me there's a lot of criticism on Muslim groups, on people from Turkish origins, people with migrants, and then you try with the little time and energy you have to react as constructively as possible to things. And then you look at the majority in society that react to this rather obviously well-organized groups that try to influence public opinion.
Einfluss auszuüben, so das Wort habe ich gesucht, und war entsetzt, wie eine Mehrheitsgesellschaft
I was shocked how this society, with all its resources, a lot of knowledge, financial resources, human resources, and all of society seemed so helpless against this development, and that shocked me. Because I know this development from Muslim communities that ended up in this reactive stance over tens of years that only discussed in a reactive way, in a defensive way, and exactly the same mechanisms and dynamics are what I've seen in the majority of society then. And I was really, truly shocked and disappointed in the way they reacted. And for me, hate has changed in the last few years, that it's become much smarter. Maybe not as loud in some regards as before, but especially those that orchestrate these debates, those that orchestrate these shitstorms, they recognized your power, the power of the audience. Before, it was about getting Gerald to stop working, or Hannes, and we stop existing. Have we stopped speaking out? Have we stopped writing? That we stop pointing out certain problems? And now it's only about pandering to the audience, or it's about changing the perception of the audience. And in the meantime, I've become really frustrated when people ask me, well, Kübra, what is hate doing with you? And yeah, we can talk about that, but especially we need to talk about what does it do to these that watch the hate. And that's what I think is the most important development in the last few years. One that is also an observation that is completely ignored, a development that is immense and dramatic, that is just at the same time silently accepted. That's okay, that's just how it is today, that people have to defend themselves because they are engaged in helping refugees and don't just reject them.
So that's the same direction as Hannes said. It's more about the whole. It's more about democracy compared to 2 years ago. The trolls have become more intelligent. Franzi von Kempis is a journalist who works at T-Online and also engages in the internet as the concerned citizen, and worked on the fake news, did some videos, and explained why Germany is no organization. And he also did a video called "What Do I Say If?" from the observation that the silent majority from time to time doesn't know what to say. For example, what do I say if I've been attacked? If somebody says you just have to be fucked in the right way. Am I allowed to say this here? Okay, it's too late. Franziska, you've been engaged in this topic for a long time. Do you believe that it's more about democracy now than 2 years ago?
What I see on my Facebook page and on the videos, and also on the videos of other people that deal with these topics. For at least 2 years is also that this urge to attack, less and less attack the person in the video, but instead gain control over the comments. It's less and less about points in the videos. So all my previous videos, very quickly they were reaction videos, very long, with lots of different points that you then have energy again have to invest energy again to discredit, to counter them. So it's not about discrediting people. It's about saying it doesn't matter what's in this video. We have the superiority over what's right and what's wrong. So it's all based on comments. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's about democracy. It's about societal opinions that are that the illusion of a societal opinion that does not really exist, and I think it's becoming more obvious, also because of what you said in the introductory statement, because I think there is a lack of support. I'm happy about everyone who's on this podium. I'm happy on everybody in the audience is here and listens, and maybe is also active themselves. But in the last 2 years, I've noticed a tendency that it's always the same people that are in these spaces, and I think it's great, and I think it also makes it nicer to be in these spaces and more enjoyable. But I think to getting away from the last 2 years, looking at the next 2 years, that we have to try and become more, that we have to go broader to regain this majority and the superiority in the discourse.
That's something that also your topic, Hannes, we found yesterday because we wanted to prepare this panel, but we started to blunder and talked about exactly this topic. And you also said that everybody has to participate. We have to take care that some opinions are not that they are not seen as being legitimate question in the middle of the society. Just 2 questions about it. Who is we? Maybe you can also define this. I said it from Lobe's point of view from yesterday. And so who is we, and how do we get people to be more engaged?
Ja, wer ist wir? Also,
well, who's we? Who's us? In the end, we're talking about a shared set of values. We believe in liberal democracy, in tolerance, and these are our values, and there is a growing group of people that do not share these values, that reject ethnic pluralism. But I think these people are not the majority. That's my personal perception, and the election results usually mirror that perception. That's why I believe in a different majority, a liberal majority, and I personally would hope that more of these people draw lines when they see that these boundaries are crossed, especially in regards to civil discourse, and also B, try to involve themselves more in the political discourse on the net, because I think that again will be a major influence on our set of values. And I'm not convinced that we're in a self-evident liberal democracy, but I think it's something we need to protect.
Yeah, you said, yeah. You said that you're wishing for it. I think that we are wishing it. But how do we get there? Which levers do we have to use? Where's the button we have to press to make this we larger? Kübra, I think that's a question you thought a lot about. And in the preparation talk, you said that we don't have to. So it's about, if we assume that we don't have racism or sexism, what do we talk about in this case? And that's the actual question in this problem, right?
Well, the thing is that I've been in these discourses for more than 1 decade, and I was always optimistic, full of energy, going into these discussions, and then I noticed that the people where I was, the co-panelists, I'm not talking about you, they were not interested in what I'm saying at all. I was sitting with people from different shades of politics, like one person from the CSU, I was 22, I was on stage with him, and the topic was something integration, migration, something Bavaria. We were discussing, and I noticed that he's not listening to me. And I realized he's just sitting there talking to the audience, joking with the audience. And I was just a supporting role, coming with statistics and facts and data that tried to bring something sane into this discussion, but actually it was just a show. It was a farce. It was not about how we can actually create better politics for integration, regarding migration, how can we deal with racism in society. It was just a show. And I've encountered many such situations in this decade where I noticed that all the energy that I and others have put into this discussion, that we waste in this discussion, goes to waste. The question is actually, if we say we become active, in which context do we actually engage? And we say everybody wants to participate, which questions do we want to talk about? If we talk about, is Islam part of Germany? Are Jews part of Germany? Is Judaism part of Germany? Are these questions we want to be discussing seriously? And for me, it's much more important to think about which questions, in which contexts, which frameworks, which framings do we discuss? Why do we discuss? What do we discuss about? With which intention do we discuss? And do we come out of a discussion because we're completely overwhelmed by an abstract scenario of fear, or do we really think we can do something, we understood something better, there's something that we can actually improve and make better? And that's where we have to go. I'm hoping for a discussion and a critical view onto the way we interact. And I'd just like to add one thing. The question is also, where do we discuss? Because we can't assume that Facebook comments lead to targeted and goal-oriented discussion.
This is a demand or wish mostly directed at the media, because they're especially where the topics are set, especially if there are still open problems, whether we can still say MAGA. And is this the part where we have to start, or where do we have to start?
So I think definitely in the N-word debate at MDR, these strong reactions where we have to make clear it cannot be that we're discussing about this. These reactions are important to signal that it's a destructive discourse, and that we signal we need more progressive discourses, we need this criticism, we need this instrument that we have in the net, that we can influence media, that we can influence policy, and that we have to use this. But also, when we're talking about these topics, it's important that we have our own agenda, one that we can push. We can say we want to talk about this or that topic, and vehemently talk about these topics. So maybe universal basic income, if we want to say we talk about this topic now actively, and we do it actively, even if Jens Spahn is spouting some nonsense or other. Just because he says something, we don't have to spend hours talking about that he said something and why it was stupid what he said. And I think we're all kind of on the same boat here, and we're all in agreement. And one other thing that I think is important, often when I say that, I hear, yeah, but Kübra, these are important topics, we have to talk about them. I'm like, yeah, definitely, we can talk about all topics in the world, we can talk about everything, really everything, no problem whatsoever. But for me, the question is, do we talk about these topics at a societal scale, or are we explaining it to singular people? I have no problem if somebody asks me if I shower with a headscarf, but I don't have to answer that question in a talk show. And I think here we just need to have certain qualities and mechanisms that we have to develop, where we just try and select what is relevant for society as a whole, and what can we do by just sending someone to Jens Spahn and explaining it to him. And that's why I think we have to manage our energy better, we have to manage our attention better, and just overall reflect what we should all be talking about and what is relevant for everyone.
Gerald, you have an organization called Fearless Democracy, and it's about three things. about understanding anger and hate better, to help single persons better, and it's also about helping media, civil society, how to defend against the strategy of haters and populists. Do you have, did you learn something new at this new work you would have liked to know before the shitstorm? Would you have been able to handle it better?
Sure, yeah. I think in my personal history, and opposed to maybe other biographies, something that differentiates me. I was never an activist. I never wanted to be an activist. I was always a political person, but my choice was not to start and to organize. So yeah, it was a choice I took, but not what I thought 2 years ago, if you had asked me back then. So the shitstorm that kind of changed my life, at least in part, is the result of something that I did not predict. And the question, if I had behaved differently, is insofar irrelevant that I took a lot of positive things out of it. So sometimes you actually get pushed to something that ends up being good. But of course, it's not that in my private experience I have made many mistakes. And that's something that's kind of the next step. It doesn't matter if you're a reluctant marketeer or a feminist or activist for rights of disabled people. So we have people that are trying to create a more inclusive society, however that might be defined, and they do that loudly and vocally with a significant chance that if they're somewhat successful in that they experience something like I did. And the goal cannot be to turn off these people, to let these groups spread fear and hate, but also to get everyone, whether your world is feminist or has a marketing background or it's about refugees, to try and tell you to please never open your mouth, because then you might be experience the same thing I did. And that's the point. It's about spreading fear. The pluralist society that I believe a large part of which is sitting in front of me here shall be intimidated. That's the reason.
Franzi,
you have luckily not been intimidating, although you also had one of the more feminist videos became the center of some troll action, and nevertheless you continued. What did you learn you would like to share with that? What have you learned about trolls, what we all have to know better?
About trolls per se, so the people that take up these shitstorms and that try to start one. I think I especially learned to not underestimate that. So the first year I started Concerned Citizen, I just ignored a lot. Just for me and also for the people I work with, just saying, yeah, can't listen to that too much, can't pay too much attention to that. And two very concentrated shitstorms, one of which led to my Facebook page being blocked for hate speech. So these actions, only then I realized what it means when it's really organized. There were calls on the internet, especially on YouTube, to engage. And you have to think across platforms. You can't just think about Facebook and say, yeah, they're all on Facebook, that's the problem. I think there is a large troll problem on YouTube, because a lot of that is created from just one video, one comment that then crashes down in Facebook and only then becomes obvious in our perception. And I feel that in Germany or in the German-speaking region, we don't engage enough with YouTube, except maybe the top 20 YouTubers. So that's something I learned. We need to look across platforms, but I also learned that at the end of the day, it's it's becoming more organized, but the organized makes it easier for me personally in my own personal practice, because I've taken out of that what I personally want to do is not the big picture, even though I think we have to tackle that, but that I become a lot of emails from people asking, well, so what do I do? Just tell me what to do. We have the law, can the law take care of it? And I've decided for myself that I want to deal more with the topic, and that's what I'm doing in the videos. What could I say instead? What would I like to hear when I see certain things in the comments? And that's only a small beginning. It's also, of course, a copy of what you're doing every day. But I think that in this rapid technological development that we're currently in, and that's what it is, networks are developing, algorithms are faster than at least my brain, that we can never forget that there's people for who the jump between I'm reading information on the internet, I perceive it and I understand it, and I actively engage with it and I write something, that's a big jump for many people, and that we all expect a lot from each other there.
So actually we need a large platform where we all can list 250 most troll options we copy there.
Yeah, or we would need a nationwide organized thing that puts it on the agenda, not focusing on what can the state do, but what can the company, what can my employer do, what can... And I think it's very important that there's always money being invested into youth programs and educational programs, and that's still not enough. But we have to... We can never forget who's pouring the hate out on the net. They're the adults, and it's not the youth.
One thing I'd like to add, one thing about my story is that what's the more instance behind blocking people, and a topic we saw the last 1 to 2 or few years is that it's not that the subject is becoming part of the hate campaign, but also that parts of the economy are getting a lot of shitstorms. We have seen like 10 or 20 campaigns of larger campaigns which had the goal to destroy some kind of company, at least Katjes, which was the question: can we lynch a woman with a headscarf which has problems with gluten at the main station? And so the economic organizations are at the moment the goal of the hate, and they have to prepare for this. Hannes, have you at the hate exchange, did you discuss with it? You've also said that, Franzi said yes, it's important to discuss, to invest into digital education and sensibilize young people and about what happens, what do you have to look for, but we cannot to build an army of young people against adults. And Hannes, you said you were going to higher schools. What do you do there?
So we want to take the principle to schools and practice with pupils. We want to get them to log in with anonymous profiles on platforms. We are pitching a topic, a political topic, and then we let them discuss with each other. We reflect on it together. We look, did you become personal? Did you run personal attacks? Were you sticking to the facts? Did you know about the topic before you engaged or not? And then you do the next round. So we really want to teach young people how to discuss in a digital sphere, fact-based and kind of courteous.
I
just wanted to add something to what Franzi said, because you said people write to you and I ask, what can I do? What can I write? I think you said you're giving them proposals. I think the most sustainable development in that regard, but also maybe more important, that we teach people how to recognize that a commenter is dishonest, is a troll, or maybe a bot even, and that we can teach people to recognize this, because then you don't even get into this this content discussion, and to prevent that they even gain influence on our mood, on our societal perception. I think I try to make this visible when we talk about bots or trolls. They are organized and they try to influence and infiltrate discourse. It's you can imagine that, like, when in this audience there would be 10 people that come here on as a group, sit apart, and they just keep doing all over, or maybe even shout in the middle and disrupt everyone. And then after no more than 30 minutes, then, that would lead to everyone here saying, yeah, I kind of don't like what's being said here, and it's definitely something we can discuss. And then we have Q&A, and the first 10 people that speak up are from these 10 people that are sitting all across the audience that don't seem to be related to each other, and they control the entire discourse. They control the atmosphere, they control the mood, they control the framework, they dictate all of that. And I think it's really important that we engage with young people, but especially older people, that not everything that they see, that they perceive on the net comes from real people voicing their real opinions, but that sometimes we're just dealing with trolls, we're dealing with bots, we're dealing with the result of organized forms of discourse leadership. And if we teach that to people, then we don't even have to get to react, but they see by themselves, a bot, a troll, and they don't let themselves be influenced. That's what I meant in the beginning. How our mood, how our perception is influenced, that's what I think is the most important and the most damaging development. I would like to just speak against that, Kübra. I think it's about majorities, really. In Facebook, for example, it's not so easy to recognize a troll. We see that after a year and a half that it's not so easy. And I believe, to stay with your example, if there were multiple people in this room, they were tut-tut-tutting all the time, and it's important that 10 people turn around and say, could you please shut up? Or say, if you have something to say, then get a microphone. Yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't react. I'm saying that it's important that people recognize it's not my colleague that's contradicting me, it's organized. It's not about not responding, it's about developing the ability to recognize, that's a bot. That's shouting. It's not someone that is really outraged for some good reason or other. Yeah, so it's about understanding mechanisms, yes. Just a short addition. Yes. Yeah, I think people should recognize that. I think this is getting into the area, what can the citizen, regular citizen, even learn to perceive? Not everybody's a trained journalist like us. What I've seen a lot in the last few months, in the last 6 months, the troll sets the agenda. They set a topic on the agenda that they know will get people to engage. They don't find a lot of other trolls to engage with this. They find a lot of just regular people that say, yeah, actually, no, I agree. I also don't think that women should act like this in the video. I think they should go back to the kitchen. And yeah, Islam and Judaism, like, yeah, I just saw new numbers regarding the Holocaust, by the way. These are not classical trolls, and it's also not always the same that appear here, but it's people that feel encouraged. And these people need counters. They need people speaking up, and you need facts or learned facts, accessible knowledge, easily accessible knowledge, so that you, when you recognize the troll, that you're capable of answering in a controlled way. So yeah, I'm with you. I think there should be responses, and I think it's important, but I think what's being ignored too much is actually making it obvious and pulling the mask from these trolls. And I think that's an important part. We don't have to just stand up and speak up. We have to and I think it's important, but we also have to show and point out what's happening, because only then can we do something sustainable. The trolls will always have new arguments. They will always try and capture new discourse, and they're learning from the ways we react. They're learning also that we talk about the mechanism. They will do an even better job of hiding themselves, and we will be unable someday to recognize trolls and bots what they are. But we have to try and keep the upper hand, where when you look at the debate, to say something is happening and it's not normal, it's not natural.
Gerald, the mechanisms Kübra and Franz talked about is one of the topics you're talking a lot about. You say if we don't understand how intelligent and how good they are, we can't really defend this. Yeah, it also shows in the debate we don't even have an evening for the topic, a name for the topic, so that's where the problem starts. So everybody here in the panel sees the problem, but very individually. We can talk about trolls and haters, and there are some working methods, but there are, of course, also different ones. And it's important to not only call them trolls because we dehumanize them, because even the troll thinks that he's on the right side and we are on the wrong side. So if I read after the little scandal at Republica today that we are the left-leaning part of the society who look down on the rest of the society, it's about the Bundeswehr, the army. I followed the discussion a little bit, and it seems like it's been talked about the Republika like there is a Rote Flora-Treffen here. So everybody here are left-leaning and everybody here is against the army. And there is no different opinion. And to acknowledge and to accept a discourse like this, that there is a left and that there's a right, makes the opinion of the others valid. It's also important to say that there are some people who are left-leaning here, but of course there are also one or two CSU voters in this room, and it's also part of the discourse we have to do. And not everybody here is left-leaning, not everybody here is against the Bundeswehr. Hannes, do you think that this is also one of the nuclear problems, that we think in left and right and we and the others?
Yeah, well, we're always looking for identity and belonging, so we try to join up with one group or another. And we specifically tried with hashtag I'm Here to create and join a faction of liberal democracy, so we can create a majority to work against the illiberal forces. And that's the kind of positioning and identity, and I think it's really important that we position ourselves more again. That for years we've always kept our opinions open. I know that from my own circle of friends. I was the same for a while, just one day this way, one day the next day the other. And I think it's important to show and stand up for one's opinions and to discuss about it in a fact-based way.
Kübra, you're nodding and you're applauding. Do you think we don't have enough opinions? We, the not a radical right part of the society?
So I see a lot of efforts. So here and different actions, that there's a change there. So you're not just talking about it, you're also doing it, and that of course influences others that are doing the same thing, that stand up for their values and engage. And I see a lot of people trying hard, but I'm also with you that I think we need more of that, and that it's important to get rid of that fear that when you speak up you'll earn a shitstorm, but by showing and standing up for your beliefs, that you also become visible, and it's not just that everything is rosy, nice, and colorful, and look, we're standing up against racism for plurality, but something is happening. You can see that we're living in a society where there's a cultural battle of sorts going on. You talked a lot about what's happening and how things are related, and also with Breitbart. And maybe you remember last year, BuzzFeed had the investigation into emails between Milo Yiannopoulos and Steve Bannon, the shooting star of the alt-right. They keep reusing the same terms that signal that these people believe themselves to be at war, and I don't even think that we should think that we are at war, that we should start panicking. But I think we should make clear to ourselves again that we're in a discourse and a debate where the others feel that they are at war, and that's why they take up arms. They use different mechanisms, different methods, and that is something that we have to be aware of. And that means that if you're radiating certain values in Germany today, then you're getting certain reactions, and it's important for us to be aware of that and to know that there's something at stake and something we can lose. There's something that we can lose, and I see how many of my friends from scientific or cultural and arts backgrounds with the background of migratory background that keep withdrawing more and more from society because it's so exhausting. And so all of those that are not directly affected are required to stand up, to endure, that it can hurt if you stand up for someone else, that it's not just all selectivism, you like something and that's it, that it's serious. It's, for many of us, the question is, do we still want to be in Germany 10 years from now? Can we live in a society where our belonging is always questioned, where it's always a topic for discussion? Can you remember one day in the last 2 years where somebody in Germany, where nobody was talking about Islam anywhere in Germany? I can't. And there's always people, even on the left side of the political spectrum, that are talking about cozying up with Muslims, and I'm always wondering, why wasn't I invited? So I find we have to make it clear and strongly obvious that there's something to lose. It's not going to be easy, it's not going to be pretty, but it's important to stand up for what makes us us, for what holds us together, for our plurality. And that is not the task of everybody who's directly affected, but especially of those who aren't.
Gerald, you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I think from an outside perspective, I mean, we keep meeting on panels, but we were laughing earlier because sometimes the scene around this topic with no name is kind of small, and there's a reason, because this topic that doesn't have a name yet is on the market in this form for 2 years. There's agents, organizations, a little bit like environmentalism, which has over the years become a broadly distributed societal topic thanks to large organizations with the funding and the backing they need. And it was a long journey getting to this point where today we can say, oh, there's lots of things happening, some more sensible, some maybe less. And our topic that keeps getting us on panels and talk shows, and we always see the same 4 to 8 people that are either fighting individually or just small organizations that kind of somehow scrounged by for the last few years. And then the trolls are like, oh, these people are filling their coffers with their activism, but no, actually, economically, there couldn't be a worse decision than what we're doing. The topics that are important, there's state funding and European funding, but it's very little. This is mostly really idealism. All of us kind of work out of their own pocket into an idea that is personally important for them. And that means at the end of the day, support can also just mean solidarity, but it can also be a donation. A donation to I'm Here or one of us. And yeah, this is where we should show the bank account. It has to be said.
I believe that what has changed the most compared with 2 years ago is that the hate, the trolls came very fast, very strong, very unexpected, and we, mediators, politics, the social society, were overwhelmed about what happened, what came to us. And compared with 2 years ago, I think that we are not just running around blindly, but we try to we're not just trying to defend, but we try to get ahead, and it comes out very nicely whenever Kübra is talking about it, that we have to set our own agenda. We have 10 minutes left, and I'd like to do a short round. What's up in the future? What are your plans? What are your visions for the next months or years? Franziska, let's start with you.
Ganz leichtes Thema.
Very simple question.
Also mein ganz konkreter
So my
Ansatz
very
dieses Jahr
concrete approach for this year is to,
auch wenn es
even
bekanntes Thema ist, ich
if it's
möchte mich
a well-known topic,
wir reden viel über Gegenrede, aber mir fehlt es
I think we're
an
talking a lot about
Ansätzen,
counter-speech, but I'm lacking concrete approaches. People that speak up, when they get the chance, they ask, what do I say? How do I say it? And that's something that we're going to spend my year doing. There's a lot of topics, be it anti-Semitism, be it sexism, maybe also the discussion about Islam again. I don't know. It just feels to me that every day there's 10 topics that I see where I feel that I cannot quickly react. That's my concrete approach. The grand vision is
You don't have to have one.
I would like to have one. I don't have it right now. I think maybe it's a desire, it's a wish that I said earlier. I want to get beyond this point that you called earlier, this topic of supporters. When we sit here again 2 years from now, then I would wish that none of us are sitting here. I would wish that there's 4 completely different people between the ages of 12 and 70, I don't know, that have come to this topic in entirely different ways, that don't talk about hate, that they talk about what they created, something, how they found to this topic, that they created a workshop in higher education, that they had an employers program that some large company has started, which is how they got to this topic, that they read an article maybe from you, and then I decided to do something myself. And that's the point I want to get to and get beyond, and I don't have any approach for that. And I think maybe that's something I'm going to take from this, that looking forward, I would think about what could be visionary, no matter which direction, the approach to get beyond this hurdle.
Hannes.
So I was sitting at Lake Garda, and you asked me for a simple solution. I was looking at the water, and I didn't find it. So I think in the end, it's a lot about, at the core, about responsibility across all instances for a convincing model of society. That's something that I think we have to think about again. I think that all participants need to draw some registers here. I can't talk about specific levers, but things like better and faster enforcement, better education. I want the big platforms to stick to their community standards, that people are more courteous to each other. I want people to participate in the dialogue in social media. So you see there's a lot of levers here, but I think if we pull all of these, then we can achieve something big. And the second thing, I'd like to have a format on the net where we can really discuss the big topics, both on a values level and also in a politically current level. I have a vision indeed, and you already named it. A year and a half ago, I ask myself, what would I say, what would I do, what would I write, how would I live if there was no racism, no sexism, no anti-Semitism, and so on in this world. And for a long time I didn't have any answer, which kind of shocked me, which made me realize that I've lived very driven by these topics in the last 10 years. And then I was looking for answers. I realized that was my personal vision. And I asked myself what you said in the end. I want that we can be examples, that we can experiment, that we can try how public perception and thinking could work. And I think it's horrendous that in our public formats we have very few or maybe no formats that can be examples, that experimentally try to talk about controversial topics or perceived controversial topics in a constructive way. And so I thought, what does it do with a society that cannot participate on public discourse? What is a civil society that does not see how these topics are discussed and how we can constructively discuss them? And then I put on my hat and said, okay, this is what I'm going to work on now. So my vision is, or maybe my personal, very personal intention and my goal is to tweak small screws to enable public thinking, to allow for constructive formats of engagements where we talk about hot topics, where we can publicly think and publicly showcase public thinking. So that's my personal goal, and I think the rest follows from that. So I get the final words.
No, that's what I do, of course. No pressure.
So as goal, as a community this year, as an organization, we're looking at digital mass hate, so to say, so not the counter speech in comments where it's about specific subjects or organizations. So this year our topic is something we call hate aid, and we just got public support for a specific project that helps us make a first step where we say, okay, we have to stop talking about the haters all the time, but maybe instead talk about the hatees, the victims, because now there's a lot of them, and every week, every half week, there's more and more of them. And maybe before the first person kills themselves about an experience like this, we need to create possibilities to support people and to enable people to help themselves. And that is something that we want to do as an organization. That is our focus this year. There's also the vision that kind of builds on that. And that is making hate treatable from a perspective of victims. That means making the tools less hurtful. And it would be good if the bubble that is not at Republica, but the rest that only reads Zeit and assumes Republika does not relate to them at all, understands the mechanisms of hate, and that the intention is to influence the big opinion, the majority opinion. And that is something that still works better in printed media and other formats than maybe Twitter. So when we managed to explain to my father that he doesn't have to be on Twitter to read the opinion that was formed on Twitter, then that would be the meta goal for me in the next year, and I think society has to manage that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that good news is that we not only talk, but there are things happening, that we do things that we have not lost, and we are getting more and more. And the good news is that we will be sitting here in 2 years and things will have changed. I have been asked to announce that at the meetup space 1, Together Against Hate Speech from das Netz, and you're all invited to talk about this, what we can do. And that's also good news. Thanks for being here.